I'm Taiho Yamada from MOK, and I'm here with Synthtopia at NAMM 2018. And this year, we're showing the new editor version of Waverazor, long awaited. It's like last year we showed Waverazor for the first time, and it's a brand new synthesis technology, patent pending oscillators that slice up waveforms and recombine them into a new harmonically rich sound. And then we introduced a couple of new synthesis techniques like mutant AM, which is a complex ring mod that is sort of sequenced over time with each of the slices, and multi-sync, which is hard sync at multiple simultaneous points inside of a single cycle or out beyond a single cycle of a wave. So there's a lot of power in this synth engine. If I actually count up all the parameters in a maxed out patch, it's over 12,000 parameters. So we've been working on getting that into the Waverazor editor this past year. And with that many parameters, it becomes a problem of information management, right? There's a lot of stuff. How do you find things in a meaningful way? So the way that we did it is we made a contextual editor, and it's based on where you want to focus. So in the center of the GUI, there's your focus module. Right now we're looking at an oscillator. You navigate to different modules using the top navigation area, which is basically laid out like, you know, a normal voice block diagram for, you know, regular synthesizers. If you're a synthesist, you'll recognize this. It's like a 3 oscillator configuration into filters, into an amplitude, an amplifier. And you can click on the different blocks to move around. And that module becomes your focus in the center. Now on the left and right sides are contextual items, things that are connected to the center module. Like on the left-hand side, like we're looking at a filter right now, on the left-hand side is the oscillator mixer that's feeding that filter. And on the right-hand side is the output from that filter into the voice amp mixer. And if you see something that's going on, like either prior to or after that filter, then you can just hop to it. You can click this button and it brings that mixer into focus. So now I'm looking at the oscillator mixer, and on the left-hand side, actually see the oscillators. On the right-hand side, we see the filter that we were just previously at. So you can move around back and forth through the voice path that way, or you can, you know, jump to wherever you want to go up at the top navigation point. That's basically the concept of how you get around in this editor. I think it's kind of a simple, elegant solution to managing all these parameters that we have. Now, I don't think I've ever seen this done in a synthesizer. So I'm really excited that this is our solution. I think it's really fast. On the left-hand side, inputs and outputs, we have sometimes different types of controls, so we've categorized them. Like right now we're looking at the audio path, but you can actually look at and see if there's any controls that are hooked up to anything. There's nothing on this particular mixer, but if I go to the oscillator, there's some controls that are affecting the oscillator parameters directly. I can see things like the audio input that we just activated. So that can feed into the oscillator, and that comes from your audio track inside of your DAW. Like it depends on your DAW. You can instantiate just the synthesizer, or we also provide an effects version of Waverazor that you can route the audio through and slice up your own audio. And the synthesizer is still active. It's a weird effect. It's a little bit like ring mod. It's a little bit like decimation. It's a little bit like a vocoder because you can play it. Maybe if we have time, I'll show you a little bit about that later. And then I could also see matrix mod routes that are routing into the oscillator. I should talk a little bit about the engine now, because we didn't talk about it last year. There was no way for users to edit the engine, but it's a super powerful engine. This year you can finally get in and take a look at the oscillator itself. We've surfaced some of the parameters to the top panel GUI, but not all of them. And now you can see all of the parameters that are involved in slicing the sound. This sound here, actually, let's go to a simpler sound. I'm going to go into the template, pick out a sine. I'm going to solo a single oscillator. So it's a sine wave. In each step, you can change the shape of the waveform that is in that step. And then it changes the sound. And that way, you can construct your single cycle. Now, right now, the waveform is chopped up into 4 parts. It's in quarters, right? So you can actually change that. I'm going to add more steps to it. There's 5 steps, 6 steps, 7, 8. Let's go back to 5. And then you can change the step size, like how many slices are going per cycle. So right now it's in quarter step size, but I can change it out to single cycles, or that's 1/8 of a cycle, all the way up into 1/64 of a cycle, or out into wave sequencing territory. This is like 3 steps or 6 steps. It starts getting into being a wave sequence instead. And you can bounce back and forth between audio rate and non-audio rate stuff. There's a parameter called step cycle in the oscillator that basically tells the entire oscillator to reset at a certain point. And you can change that to to be either off or to find the nearest integer repeat. Like essentially, it's like kind of math. There's fractions of a waveform, and there are certain fractions that are whole fractions, right? Like 1 of 1 or whatever. But if you start chopping it up, then those divisions become kind of not right on the step division. I'm not saying this right. I'm like harmonic. Right. So you use this step cycle parameter to lock it into a certain amount of cycles, and then it'll reset. So that can go up to 64 cycles, or any number between, or it can go to like the nearest, closest cycle that's available at any given point. And that could be kind of random depending on what you put into this the number of steps. And then there's this step frac parameter that basically can it moves the endpoint of this train of slices in fractions of a fraction. So it's like a fine tune for the step size parameter. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening just in the slicer. And then in each of the waveforms, you've got controls for all the pitch and phase and detune. You've got controls for the level and DC offset. And you start creating more timbres that way. So you have 3 of these oscillators, and then those run through an oscillator mixer into their filter section. And you have a 3 filter configuration that can be run in series or parallel. And in each of these filters, you have a choice of various flavors of filters. Like we have your traditional state variable. You can select 2-pole, but it's not limited to that. You can be anywhere between 2 and 32 poles. We have an X-pole ladder, which is also a variable pole between 1 and 32 poles. Comb filters, resonators, tap lines. But you also have things that are like, not traditional filters, like bit reducer, quantizer. We have a wave shaper in here. We have bi-quad filters, so you can create an EQ if you need to. Envelope followers, lots of stuff. So in these 3 filter blocks, because we have so many things that you can do, we've put in some extra sub-blocks for filters. So you can actually do a split filter inside one of these blocks, or you can bring in a filter block inside of these higher DSP blocks. So in this case, like a filter block would be 3 filters in series, or you can do it in parallel, or you could do 1 into 2 split, or you can also just go crazy and bring in an entire filter bank, and that is 8 filters inside this one filter block. And those can run in series, parallel, A/B split, 4 on one side, 4 on the other, and this other A/B split that's serial into split into serial again. We'll probably come up with some more configurations, but there's some interesting stuff that you can do in the filters. So 3 filters at the very top, and so that multiplies out to 24 filters that you can just drop in. Yeah, you can go crazy if you want. Then it runs through the amplifier, through the mixer, and into our effects section. And the effects have a similar sort of structure. We have delays and chorus flangers. That stuff can also be arranged in a bank. And since this is on the bus at the end, it's not per voice. This is, you can have up to 16 effects in a chain. There's serial, parallel, these A/B split configurations. Lots of stuff that you can do in effects as well. All the filters that we just saw in the filter section are also available in the effects. You're limited. There's 2 types of effects. There's some that are very memory intensive, like delays and choruses and things like that, reverbs. And things that are not, like an EQ or a filter or a distortion. Those things that are memory intensive, you can only have 4 of them at one time, but that's per bus. So out of all those effects, what is that? That's 3 times 16, and I'm terrible at math, so I don't know what that is. But what is that, like 48 effects? So, I counted up all the parameters in Waverazor the other night. It's 12,656 parameters. And that's pretty much how you get there. It's like all these nested blocks. There's all this power in there. You have 128 possible modulations sources, so you can get 128 LFOs going if you want, 128 envelopes, or any combination of those. There are 484 modulation routes available. So there's power there. Now, you don't have to use it all, but it's there if you need it. So that is the Waverazor editor version. We're planning to release it at the beginning of March, and it's finally very close.